I named it your after credit scene because in a way, you're planning your after credit scene, right? The movie is over when the credits roll, but then right after that, you see what happens right after the movie. And what is your after credit scene going to look like? Is your family going to be able to focus on remembering you and honoring your memory and getting through their grief? Or are they going to be stuck in a court process?
Hi, welcome everybody to Realizations. I'm your host, Andrea Gordon, and today I'm really excited. I have a wonderful attorney who handles all kinds of trusts and documents like that. Cecilia Amo is here, and I wanted to give a little bit of background for the podcast before we started so that Cecilia can hear it honestly. I started this podcast because I got really pissed off about the NAR DOJ lawsuits and the commission lawsuits in real estate. It felt to me very disrespectful and profoundly ignorant to see these things, and also to know that the plaintiffs were usually extremely wealthy people that had ties to companies like Zillow and Trulia and what have you, and it just felt corrupt and horrible to me. So I thought maybe I'll be mad for like several years, or I can do something positive. And the positive thing that I decided to do was to create a podcast that educated the American people as to what it is realtors actually do, what our jobs entail, the number of different vendors and different people who do different things that relate to real estate that we have to interact with all the time, how our real estate affects city governments and the budgets of cities, how our work is bound by ethics and morals, and how we also are constantly learning, having to take education classes, what have you. I just wanted people to understand what all's involved, and also to disabuse young people who think about getting into the business and think it's going to be super duper easy. It is not. And I wanted to make sure that people knew what they were getting themselves into. So, Cecilia, I am so happy to have you here today. You're just beautiful. It's lovely to see you. Tell me a little bit about what you do, and also tell us and hawk your book. I would love for you to tell us about your book.
Well, thank you so much. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. So, yes, I'm Cecilia Amo. I'm an estate planning attorney here in California. I started my career in catastrophic injury litigation, actually. My first job was with Johnny Cochran's law firm. I was the first Asian attorney hired there, so I saw some pretty crazy things. But when I met my mentor in estate planning, I realized that it just resonated with me. Like I didn't want to just be there for families after crisis had happened, that I could actually help families proactively plan to stay out of court if a crisis occurs, to make things as easy as possible in the aftermath of tragedy. Um, and also, she really was an advocate for holistic and relational legal practice. So my approach is a little bit different from a lot that's out there because I focus on strategy, education, helping people understand their options and feeling empowered rather than just overwhelmed. And I think what you said earlier about why you started this podcast is I relate to that because I think our profession face a lot of the similar challenges of the average person thinks it's just one thing, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh, estate planning is just paperwork. That's like putting up a sign in front of your house and thinking that's going to be okay. Like it's not,
Exactly.
yeah, it's you might sell, but I mean there's so much more that goes into it. So, I like to say estate planning isn't just about the documents really. It's about designing outcomes, in a worst case scenario. And the only way you can do that is really understanding how the law works, how it applies to your situation, and figuring out what that outcome is. And then you create the plan to get there. And then the documents are just the side effect, the byproduct, the tools. You can't start with the documents because then, where are you going to wind up? Where does
Yeah.
that really, yeah.
You have to
So,
have a wealth of information about the people that you're dealing with. Just like in any sort of a real estate transaction, I need to understand what the seller's motivations are. I need to understand
mhm.
what the buyer's motivations are. I need to understand what their boundaries are, their limitations, why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, context is actually everything. So
Absolutely.
figuring those things out and having the ability to genuinely listen to what it is people are saying and what they need and extrapolating from what they're saying what is going to be the very best choice set of choices for them and also still
Hmm.
treating them with the respect that adults are due. I think it's a hard profession. Yeah. I mean, attorney, yeah, what did Shakespeare say? Shakespeare said kill all the lawyers in one of his. So I think that lawyers have gotten a bad rap for a long time. A lot of my clients are attorneys and they're very smart people. Most of the politicians you actually like and respect are attorneys. They're attorneys everywhere, and unfortunately, a lot of the politicians you hate are also attorneys. But
It's true. It's true. That's one of the things I actually mentioned in my book is that people imagine attorneys is in basically what we've seen on TV and in
right,
movies. And I think you just need attorneys different. You need different attorneys for different things. So, like, if
right,
you're accused of a crime that you did not commit, you absolutely want a bulldog of an attorney who will tell you what to do, how to sit, whatever, and just be super aggressive.
right,
But when you're trying to plan out your legacy, you don't want an attorney who's going to tell you what to do. You want
right,
someone who's going to be more collaborative, more relational, someone where you're going to be in the driver's seat and they're going to guide you. They'll be your GPS, right? Uh,
right.
it's just different skill sets. And I totally get that. I always get the comment that I seem way too nice to be an attorney. And it's, yes, I did trial work actually, and
Yeah.
I wasn't the one they would put up for cross-examinations, but man, was I great at arguing motions and oppositions because I was just such a nice person, and the judges would always be like, "Oh wow, you're so nice."
I loved what you were saying before we got started here, a little bit about your orientation to your work. Can you speak a little bit about Comic-Con and how you have gotten into all of that? And also tell us the title of your book
Oh,
because
yes. I
yeah.
forgot to plug my book. So, yes, I recently came out with a book called Your After Credit Scene, A Nerd's Guide to Wills, Trusts, and Legacy. And much like I said before, how estate planning is about designing outcomes, I named it Your After Credit Scene because, in a way, you're planning your after credit scene, right? The movie is over when the credits roll, but then right after that, you see what happens right after the movie. And what is your after credit scene going to look like? Much like how I said that estate planning is about designing outcomes, I call the title of my book is Your After Credit Scene because it's like you're designing, you're planning your after credit scene for the movie of your life.
Mhm.
After the credits roll, is your family going to be sitting around being able to just focus on your memory and honoring it and being together in their grief? Or are they going to be stuck in a court process? Are they going to be stressed out because suddenly they have to face the scary thing of probate court?
Or is it going to be a blooper roll? Yeah, and I thought it was really unique that you had focused on a gener had have you focused on the millennials and Gen Z people and that whole lingo in relationship to the work that you do. So if you could address that too, I would love that.
Yeah, well, I think so. My whole book, the premise is explaining estate planning through the lens of pop culture. And so I think it really speaks to millennials, Gen Xers too, because I've got some old lifestyles of the rich and famous and Star Wars
Mhm.
references in there, older Star Wars, original Star Wars, and then some anime references for the Gen Zers. But really, it's just so much of our world we kind of process through the lens of pop culture. It's so present in our lives, right?
Right.
The Marvel movies, the Game of Thrones, all these things. You could just see like the rise of convention culture too, and
Yeah,
how big Comic-Con has gotten. And I've always been a nerd. I've just been a nerd my whole life.
me
So
too.
what's your nerddom?
I am a theater person. I write
Oh,
plays, I direct plays, I produce plays. I play piano. I'm a classical pianist. So I'm about as nerdy as a person can get, to be honest with you. And getting my PhD, I'm surrounded by more nerds. So I'm just living in a world of nerddom right now.
my first nerd friend was from a family that was very musical. She
Hmm?
was the one who introduced me to musicals. She made me a whole like tape, cassette tape back then of
Right.
Les Mis songs and
Aw.
Phantom of the Opera. And the reason why we became friends was because I was repeating some line from a video game and she recognized it and we instantly bonded. So that really showed me the power of like common interests, like,
Yeah.
you know.
I
Um,
think what you're talking about really, and for my listeners who are realtors, Cecilia is really talking about your best fit customer. How you find where you belong and the people that are going to react the best to you and the people that you're going to enjoy working with the most. So I think it's a beautiful thing that you have organically come to all of these realizations and then ended up writing this book. It's pretty amazing, actually.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and for all of my viewers out there, tell us a little bit about what is involved in what you do. You're helping people to come up with structured wills, obviously, but you're also dealing with California state
Mhm.
requirements. You're dealing with probate. You're dealing with, tell us a little bit about all of that.
Well, here's the thing I think people need to understand is that even if you haven't created your own estate plan, the government has an estate plan for you. There is a default estate plan that is in place whether you like it or not.
Right.
And estate planning is how we opt out of the government's default plan. And
Yeah.
also that the government's default plan in California is very expensive. And it's
Mhm.
not just stressful and terrible, but on average, probate can cost around 5% of market value of assets. And if you think about what's the average cost of a home in California, what would you say?
In my neighborhood, 1,200,000.
All right. So what is 5% of that?
A lot. 60,000
Yeah.
bucks. Yeah.
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 So, and it's not all about how much is owed on the loan. It's market value. Um, so that's a general kind of estimate of what probate can cost a family. It's quite significant. You know,
Mm.
that's like a years of college. That's
Yeah.
a business that could be started. That's a
Yeah.
wedding that could have been paid
It's a
for.
down payment on a house
Yes.
when you think about it.
So yeah. So that's the thing. And then the other thing I would say is with the will thing, it's also not about if you have a will. It's about if you have a plan that's going to avoid court and conflict.
And I see a lot of these charitable organizations sending out these free wills that you can do that, ultimately, of course, benefit them in some way because they very prominently display on there, essentially, what are you going to give us? Um,
Yes.
so people get the idea along with, no low press and things like that, that you can just do your own will yourself. But
Yes.
there's a lot of legislation around all of this stuff that I think it's really important for people to be aware of. In California, for example, talk me through if somebody dies without a will in place, what happens to their real property?
Well, it's going to go through the probate court process. So recently, in the last year, California did change their laws. Before, if you had any property over $184,000, you just went straight to probate court, and there's no real estate worth less than that. Now they've adjusted it to I think 750, which is not still not great, but if your home is under 750, you still go through a quote unquote abbreviated probate process. So either way, it's a court process that your family has to navigate. There's really two main ways to avoid this.
Hmm.
Third way is not a great way.
Tell us all
Um,
of them. I want to hear.
yes. So I think what I see a lot and what you'll see sometimes on Instagram is when parents add their adult child to title or just add anyone to title with the idea that, okay, if I die, then they won't go to probate court because they're still on title, which will work and avoid probate. But then if your child or whoever you added needs to sell, then they're going to get hit with a lot more capital gains tax versus if they had inherited.
Mhm.
So there's one bad way to do it. You know, that's kind of the poor man's estate planning. In the last few years, California has instituted a transfer on death deed law. That
Mhm.
this is something else you will see on Instagram. this is a great tool that is cost effective, but it does have drawbacks. And that's, I always explain this to my clients when it's an option in their situation so that they can make the decision whether or not they want to take on the risk. But with a transfer on death deed, you can't do any contingency planning. So if you and that person who you've named as your beneficiary in the transfer on death deed both pass away at the same time, if they become incapacitated, whatever, it still goes to probate court. So
Hmm.
what happens if you're incapacitated? A transfer on death deed only takes effect in the event of death. So there are limitations to that tool. It's often plugged on Instagram and Facebook as, oh, this is cheaper than a trust. You
Hmm.
don't need to go to a trust attorney because this is what you should do instead. And like I said, it is a good tool in the right circumstance. Just like what you were saying, everyone has a different circumstance. I bet, you could talk to two families that might look the same, but they have totally different goals, right?
Right,
Different risk tolerances, different
right.
everything. So, and then of course, the third way is the revocable living trust, which is really common for homeowners in California
I
to
run into
avoid
that
probate.
all the time. So explain a little bit about what a trust actually is and what the difference between an irrevocable and a revocable trust is.
Oh, I love this question. Okay, so first I will say that if you have seen any Instagram videos about how trusts are bulletproof and if people sue you, they won't be able to get your money, and that's why you should put things in a trust. That's a very nice story, but an asset protection trust is not the same as a revocable living trust. Asset protection trusts do exist. You can't actually set one up in California. So it gets a little dicey when you're dealing with real estate because it's very complicated to try to actually protect those
Mhm.
from litigation or something like that. So, and those kinds of trusts do start at around 25, $30,000. So that's a very
Right.
different kind of trust. So those are the irrevocable asset protection type trusts. Now,
Hmm.
going back to the revocable living trust, the main reason why you have them is to avoid probate, take it out of the court system. When you pass away or become incapacitated and you have assets in your name, the law needs to know what to do with them. If they're jointly owned with right of survivorship and the other person is surviving, sure, there's no need for a court process. If it has a beneficiary designation, transfer on death deed, life insurance beneficiary, no need to go to court, right? A trust is kind of like that. You're saying where everything goes, what happens to the assets, so that a judge is not the one determining
Hmm.
how things go. And just, I think you'll appreciate the historical background for why we have probate court, because
Hmm.
our legal system comes from old England. And
Yes.
back in the day, children inherited their parents' debts.
Yeah.
And it was awful because people would wind up in debtor's prison because
Right.
they couldn't pay it. So probate is the state function of saying, all right, this person has died. Who did they owe? Hey, creditors, it's open season. Come file your claims. We'll make sure all the claims get paid, and then we will determine who gets it under the law. So this process is public, which means anyone can go into probate records. There are people who data mine that stuff so that they can
Hmm.
see what cases are active. There's a lot of fraud that happens because anyone can come in and make a claim against assets. Tony Usa, the founder of Zappos, his personal assistant filed millions of dollars of creditor claims against his estate.
Oh my God.
Um, and his family had to fight it. I think they wound up winning against her, but she still was able to file it because it was in this open court process. I had a colleague who had a client where her mother had passed away without an estate plan, and an uncle showed up from the Philippines with a will saying that he was supposed to get the house rental property in Vegas or something like that. And the daughter had to litigate it.
Wow.
Was it a
Wow.
fake will? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But she had to pay lawyers to fight
Yeah,
against it. So
there are evil, mean people out there, and you need to protect yourself from them.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And when you are putting together a trust
Mhm.
for a revocable trust for someone, is there a reason for single people to put a trust together? Is there any reason if somebody doesn't have heirs for them to have a trust?
Absolutely. Actually, this is one of the things in my book. I have chapters for different stages of life that people are in. So I have the chapter for blended families and found family and single people and people who are child free. It's kind of more important for you to plan when you are single or if you don't have children because there's no default. It's kind of like with great power comes great responsibility.
Hmm.
There parents can say, okay, my kids get everything. But when you don't have kids, you determine your legacy. You
Right,
determine where your stuff goes.
right.
And then if you're single with and unmarried with a partner, it gets even more important to do estate planning, not just on the trust level, but you know, in the event of incapacity or death, you want to make
Hmm.
sure that those legal protections are in place for your partner. I heard the saddest story from a personal injury attorney friend of mine. She had a client whose partner was killed in a tragic accident, but no there was no plan in place, so she did not have the authority to decide what to do with his remains. And his
Oh,
his mother decided
uh-huh.
um, to not tell her or his children where he would be buried
Oh my
or when the
Lord.
funeral would be. Yeah. So his family never got to say goodbye to him.
Yeah, that's an important, important thing. Just, when I'm hearing you talk about these things, how about you as a person? The fact is, you're constant, like, I know in my career, I'm always meeting people when somebody's died, when somebody's gotten married, when somebody's had another kid, when somebody's gotten divorced, when somebody's gotten a job, when somebody's lost a job. So these are very, very significant points in people's lives. How do you deal with the fact that most of your work is associated with planning for someone's death?
What is so funny about that is I say this in my book too. I actually hate endings, and I never
Hmm.
thought I would be in this kind of profession where death is a thing that's
Right.
around.
Right.
But weirdly, when you put in to place a complete holistic life and legacy plan, something that will work legally, practically, and relationally, something that you have absolute clarity over, you get this peace of mind that is actually really freeing and allows you to live life more intentionally. For example, parents who
Hmm.
choose guardians for their children now have picked the people who might raise their kids if something happens to them. And so
Right.
they're able to live their lives more intentionally, look for opportunities to make sure that their kids have a relationship with this person. And then they have no worries in the back of their head of, well, what happens to my children if something
Hmm.
happens to me?
Does it ever overwhelm you in any way emotionally?
It can definitely, like I've attended a lot of funerals in the past year, actually.
Yeah.
More probably than any other year. I've lost some cousins and my husband has lost some people every time I feel like when I attend one of those, it's like a sacred moment for me and
Hmm.
it really connects me with the work that I do. My husband thinks it's absolutely weird, but
What
you
does he
know,
do? I'm curious.
oh, he's an IT security person
Oh,
for
there you
a bank. So he's very,
go.
but
Yeah.
he thinks it's totally weird that, and I never liked going to funerals before, but really understanding that as an estate planning attorney who cares about my client, I care about my clients, I care about their lives. I've had people lose their spouses and I've walked them through these difficult times. It's like the greatest honor of my life to be able to be there for people in those moments. And I think that's one of the things that I would really encourage people when they're looking for an estate planning attorney, especially you realtors out there looking to partner with an estate planning attorney. Your guest a couple weeks ago had a really great point about asking clients about their experiences with estate planning attorneys. So you're not just Googling random estate planning
Right.
attorneys. But
Right.
I found that sometimes people don't really have that much context for what is a good experience. So I would encourage realtors to also ask, Did that estate planning attorney walk them through some scenarios they've never thought of? Do they
Mhm.
have a process built in to to update their plan as things go by? My firm includes a free review every 3 years to my
Mhm.
clients. Plans that are out of date are one of the reasons why they fail. How relational were they? It's not just about the signing of the documents.
Right.
Did they guide you through asset alignment and how to change over your assets to make sure it works with the plan? That's another reason why plans fail. If an attorney just sends you off with a bunch of documents and no explanation of, by the way, these are some detailed steps. You have these assets, this bank account, you go make an appointment with this bank and you go do this. Why? This is why. And really walking people through the parts that will make the plan work, not just
Mhm.
the check it off the to-do list.
Right.
Now there's a document that's in place. So I totally lost my train of thought. I apologize.
No, you were talking a lot about why it is that it's important that you consider the relational aspect
Yes.
of
Yeah.
an attorney who is handling your legacy
Hmm.
plan for you. And I
Hmm.
cannot think of a better person to handle everyone's legacy plans than you, Cecilia.
Oh,
Question I have is you're in Southern California. Do you work all across the state or are you just primarily in Southern California?
I do work all across the state, so I can serve anyone virtually in the
Mhm.
state. I do have a few clients in Northern California in
Okay.
your area. So, and I try to make the process less overwhelming, again, through the educational aspect of it. I think when people understand how something works, it's a lot less scary.
Yep.
You probably had a similar experience as you talk people through, because I know I was terrified when I bought my first
I'm
home.
I'm always talking people through everything, the sellers and the buyers, I've got to tell you. Well, you are just lovely. If someone wants to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
I think the easiest way would be just to go to my website, which is amo-law.com. They can book a discovery call with me, and I can walk them through my process and answer some questions and see if it's a good fit. They can also get more information about my book there. So amo-law.com.
Well, that is just lovely, and so are you. Thank you so much for being with me today. I really
Oh,
appreciate this conversation, and I think my
thanks.
viewers will too.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. This was so wonderful. And you're such an amazing person. And
Thank you.
I want to read your screenplay that you're working on.
I that's a promise.
Okay. Yeah, well,
I'll
yes.
send it off when it's done.
And
All
then
right.
one more thing. Random fun fact about, because we were talking about Vietnam and
Mhm.
refugees. Have you ever wondered why donuts in other countries do not taste the same as donuts in California?
I have not, but please tell me why.
It's because when the Vietnamese refugees came to California, some of them opened up donut shops and created donuts with incorporating some Vietnamese baking techniques.
Ah,
So donuts in California taste completely different from the rest of the country
I
because of
had
that.
no.
Yeah,
You know what? The ladies who run the donut shop that I love are from Vietnam. It never even occurred to me.
yeah. So it's
Well,
a beautiful fact, and one of the things that I love about California, our multiculturalism.
oh yeah, I love our state. I love everything about being here. California is the mom. It really is.
Mhm.
Anyway, thank you
Okay.
so much. And I hope we stay connected. I will definitely be sending people your way. And audience,
Oh,
amolaw.com. Is it
Amo dash.
amo-law.com?
Yes,
All
yes.
right,
Thank you.
amo-law.com. And we were talking earlier before we started. Amo is actually a Latin derivation of to love. So there you
Yes,
go.
yes.
All right, be well.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
If you loved hearing from these incredible voices shaping real estate, you'll want to catch what's next. Click the video on screen to keep discovering more inspiring stories.